All right, we are back for another edition of the Astro Weather. It's me, Robert Phoenix, and a little stuffy today um, because we had. I wouldn't say it was an entirely self-indulgent Fourth of July, but there was a little indulgence involved. Let's put it that way. And so I think I have a bit of the rainy news as a result of that. Anyway, we're going to get into the Astro Weather. I'm going to kind of blitz through this thing because I do want to get over to 15 minutes of flame. And really, what I'm going to be talking about today is what's happening in Europe. And yeah, it's one of those. It's. I feel like here's how I feel about what's happening in Europe. When I saw what was going on in places like Australia and New Zealand, and to some extent Canada and other parts of Europe during COVID, I was, especially Australia and New Zealand, I was totally incensed. I mean, it was like, just pure anger, just, welling up inside of me with how they were treating a populace and how people were turning on each other in that scenario. This is similar, only probably about maybe 100 times more intense for different reasons. But we're going to get into that today over in 15 minutes of flame and the ramifications of what's going on there, and even the roots of where it all came from. Like we'll get into that today. So join us over in 15 if you want to vent a little bit regarding the situation in Paris. It's going to be throughout all of Europe. We covered this on the show on Sunday night with Sunday Night Astro Live in the EU chart, which is a sieve. So let's get into the Astro Weather, and then we have a pretty interesting star of the day, actually. To me, I mean, they're interesting. They wouldn't be a star of the day if they weren't interesting, right? I mean, let's get that straight up into the conversation. Um, so I was watching. Okay, this is really funny. We were watching this movie. I forget the name of it now. I gotta find it. And it was about this woman who was a hooker who was trying to kill herself. It's one of these film noir classics. Well, it's not really a classic, but it's pretty interesting. And I think they were like trying to figure out what to do with her. And then there was this guy who was gonna die. They were gonna, I think, strangle, hang him or something. I think he strangled somebody. And his last wish as a prisoner was to spend the night with a woman. And I guess he never spent the night with a woman or something like that. And so she volunteered. I guess they put the word out. And so she volunteered to spend his last night as a as a living human with him, right, in the cell. So the movie's all about their night in the cell together. And there's this really funny scene at towards the end of the movie, as dawn is about to break, and they decide that they're going to get married. Like, okay, this is the weird part. They're going to get married. Like after one night in a prison cell, they're going to get married, and she's thinking that if they get married, that maybe he'll be able to um get some kind of a pardon or some shit. This is from the 50s. You got to remember, it's from the 50s. And then she asks him when his birthday is, and he says February 19th. And she said, "Oh, you're an Aquarius." She says, "I'm a Pisces. Oh, we'll work really well together." I thought to myself, this is fucking funny. Anyway, the director of the movie is an odd guy. I looked a little bit into his background, and that was his birthday, February 19th. So he put his birthday in the movie, and the guy is really kind of a goofy ass Aquarian. Anyway, all right, let's take a look at the weather. It's just one of those moments you just listen to go, what? You guys are fronting some astrology here in this movie from the 1950s. Of course, it'd be an Aquarian that would do it. All right, look what we got here, boys and girls. Speaking of Aquarius, there's that moon in Aqua. We came off the full moon in Capricorn, and no wonder I'm talking about goofy ass Aquarius with the moon in Aqua. No, Aquarius is it's a fine sign. All the signs are fine. You know what I feel like? I feel like I'm a parent, and all the signs are my children, and I love each and every one of them, and they all have their little strange quirks and idiosyncrasies. So today we got the Aquarian moon, which is, we go through this stretch of the moon between Capricorn and Aquarius. The Aquarian moon's more friendly for sure, but it still has that ability to distance itself emotionally. That changes considerably when the moon moves into Pisces, which it will at some point tomorrow. But today we have and it's doing a lot, right? So we have the inconjunct with the sun going on with the moon, which is a weird inconjunct because the sun in Cancer is all about feeling and tradition and in conservatism in a lot of ways. That's the nature of the sun in Cancer. That's just how it rolls. Yeah, we did a whole show on Cancer 2 weeks ago on Sunday Night Astro Live. So we know that those are the values with Cancer. They're very conservative. They're very subjective. It's a very subjective sign. It's about feeling. And then we have the moon in Aquarius, which is completely objective, like so objective it's not even attached on an emotional level. So there's this strange kind of disassociative quality today with what we're feeling. And so part of us thinks that, well, we really should be engaged in more of a sense of attachment and connection and standing up for values and things that are intrinsically important. And trust me, they're pulling the rug out from underneath us in terms of our life or lifestyle, you name it. This is the great con of the reset and the fourth industrial revolution. So with Cancer in the air, we'll get more of it tomorrow. Later tomorrow when the moon moves into Pisces, and that subjectivity becomes very powerful, like a wave that really can't be stopped, right? Or a wave that meets meets ground with an intense amount of force. But today we're not there, especially July 5th. We're kind of in, I think, a place of abstraction in a lot of ways. And we're trying to understand kind of where we are on the emotional Richter scale. And there's another part of us that is engaged. It's not like we're disengaged, and we're not disassociative, although today is a day that's clearly marked by lots of one yod and 3 inconjuncts, right? So we have a yod here with Neptune and Pluto coming right in here to Mars. We'll get into that. And then we have this other inconjunct from the moon right to the sun. So that's another one right there. So we have this inconjunct action going on, and the yod action. So these are energies that are challenging to reconcile in some ways, right? We know that emotionally, if we tap into what we call the collective, right, that there is something that's there, like we know something's going on, and we're not all that pleased about what's happening. It's not like this is just an overnight thing. It's been going on for a while. But here the moon in Aquarius is we're trying to figure things out, right? We're trying to figure things out emotionally, and how it, because this is the ruler of Cancer right over here, right? And so we're engaged in kind of more of a analytical approach to how we're feeling, and we may not even really understand why, and I think this is actually, I would say it's good, but I would say that it is a reasonable astrological influence for today, because people are going back to work today. That's the other part of it. And when you have this in conjunct with the moon, it's kind of like, okay, we just went through this weird like time shift, 4th of July weekend, and all of a sudden, boom, you're back into another space. And even here, like I kind of, was in that fold and getting a late start today. So this is what's happening with the moon. And then of course we have some squares later on through the day. By the time we get into the evening, we have this moon square Uranus. And I feel like that people are going to be more explosive tonight. That there are, when you deal with Cancer, you're a lot, as long as you're discharging emotion, Cancer can be quite beneficial. It's a good sign if you can discharge emotion, because you can sort of, think of like Cancer. I know this is a kind of a gross analogy, but think of the toilet in your house, which is a very Cancerian thing, by the way. I mean, let's be clear about that. Cancer is local water. So your toilet is connected to water in most cases, unless you have a compost toilet. But when you flush the water in your toilet, what's happening? You are discharging. You're literally discharging the waste material that has been accumulated there, and then you're refilling it with clearer, a lot less waste-filled water. That is a Cancerian process, the flushing process. Even with Cancer, you're dealing with the kidneys, right? The kidneys are involved in flushing the system. So it's a really important function of the sign. And with the moon, which is the ruler of Cancer over here in Aquarius, it's harder to flush, because there's almost like this kind of, I wouldn't say it's deer in the headlights, but there is a bit of an emotional paralysis today. Sort of like getting back into things, I think, is just difficult. Later on, as the moon, as I said before, moves into a much more kind of volatile space with the square with Uranus, that's when, I mean, it's almost there now. It's 9 degrees, but it's really going to pick up by tonight. I just think on a global stage, this doesn't bode very well. And you've got this Aquarian in Ukraine running around talking about the nuclear power plant and how the Russians are going to blow it up. And we all know that whatever these details around any kind of war come out, they're not to be trusted. They're not, it's just invert everything, right? I mean, that's kind of the best tool that you can use. And so, there's that going on as well. And we're dealing with Uranus and uranium. And so today, especially later, our emotional bodies are jangling. They're jangling in the wind. Right now, we're trying to figure out how we can engage over here and kind of resume normalcy while this moon is sort of floating in this inconjunct mode. And there are even people that are not in the United States, and I realize that. And doesn't matter, you're still going through the same thing. You just don't have like a holiday, sort of in the rearview mirror here. It's still the same energy. It still applies. The other thing is the odd with Neptune and Pluto, and coming right in to Mars and Pallas. And that, to me, this is a biggie. This is yeah, I mean, to me, this is like the unintended consequences of violence. This is the unintended consequences of violence. And clearly there's, a great deal of violence happening in the European theater. It's all over the world. Like, violence has become a virus. They've created this virus in the world, and it's entering into kind of Mad Max like territory. Now, the reason, there's many reasons why this is happening, but mostly the reason is so that they can destroy the current paradigm across the West, and with the 3 little B's, build back better. I mean, they want to destroy everything, and so they've employed the armies of destruction in order to help them along the way, right? Destroy culture, destroy cultural artifacts, and so this wave of culture destroyers is just getting started, right? It's just getting started. And today, with what sometimes what can happen, and we've seen it here in this country, is the overreaction or the uh, the problem reaction solution part of this, the Hegelian dialectic. And in many cases, the solution can be even more totalitarian and more destructive in some ways than the actual thing itself. Although in the case of France, it's hard to imagine what that would look like. Now, Macron has turned off the communication. Like, he's just like throttled all social media. So they're putting the country on a blackout, a communication blackout, lockdown. Well, people are not fucking stupid, and they'll figure out how to get things out of there, right? So to me, the yod is like, the action. Well, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? How do we deal with this? Right? Oh, yeah. Well, let's redistribute the wealth. Right? We didn't need all those flaming cars flying out of the parking. I'd never seen anything like that before in my life. Never seen it. I mean, it's like a scene out of a fucking Batman movie, right? And right here, we've got Mars going into these critical degrees, 27, 28. And yeah, not good. Not good. So you throw Pallas in there, and on a personal level, I think this might be a reasonable kind of augur, as in like personal augur. Like, maybe you look around the world and you see what's going on and you go, oh yeah, well, there's a pattern here. Maybe I should be prepared. Maybe I should have a little more Mars in my pocket, right? That's how I would look at this. Like, don't sit on this time. Look around and see what's going on in the world, and make sure that if hell comes to your house, you're prepared. Let's see, what else do we have here? We got some squares going on with Chiron. Again, I think it's a theme of the day. Cancer wants to be left alone, just wants to be the nice little crab, that is able to go about its business and, eat shit at the bottom of the tank or the bottom of the ocean or whatever crabs do down there. No, I mean, crabs are just, just don't fuck with me. That's like that to me, it's very Cancerian. And it's kind of very conservative. Or like, that's how Americans are. Just don't fuck with me. Let me live my life. Well, it's really hard when we have Chiron over here now, and moving into this, we're moving into square mode with Chiron and Aries, and again, dealing with this whole idea of protection and firearms and protecting one's property. It'll be interesting to see what happens as the sun moves into a closer square with Chiron over the next 6 days. Keep your eyes on Second Amendment issues. I'm sure they'll be popping up. No problem. I would say, by and large, that the energy of today is a tad insecure. I mean, we have some interesting things going on with Jupiter, like some nice sextiles going on with the sun and Saturn, but it also, early in the day here, is squaring the moon. And again, Jupiter just makes everything bigger, right? When you enter this Jupiter moon square, especially with Aquarius, these are two signs that are fairly at odds. I mean, Taurus wants ground, and normally safe ground, and the moon in Aquarius is not grounded at all. So we have this square going on, and we're looking for ways to stay grounded. And here's what I would say: don't overreact, right? Like, I would not go into hoarding mode today. To me, that moon Jupiter square is like a hoarding mode moon. But I think it can bring up some things around your emotions, which are kind of, I wouldn't say they're untouchable, but they're clearly not in any kind of alignment today with practical everyday Cancerian stuff. So even that Jupiter square can make that bigger. It can make you feel more out of sorts to some degree. So just keep your eye on that. I'd say today is kind of a bit of a tricky day. It's a bit of a tricky day. It's these yads, and it's the so-called solutions that come out of, of course, you always have Neptune and Pluto back here, and just waiting to work their wonder and their magic with this yod. Leaders of the world, I would say that we might be looking at some kind of emergency meeting or something along those lines with all those people that we love and trust and have so much faith in. Okay, let's take a look at the star of the day. Very interesting star of the day. You may not think she's interesting, but she's one of the reasons why we're all here today, if you're still here. Today's star of the day is Susan Wojcicki. Susan Wojcicki. I left a C out in there. There's supposed to be a C there. Sorry, Susan. Now, Susan looks like a hard-ass bitch right there. That's because she probably is. Susan Wojcicki was the person who was working for Google at the time. She was employee number 19. And she was working for Google, and she was the head of marketing at Google. And she thought it would be in Google's best interest to buy YouTube. So she was the architect of the YouTube acquisition, which they paid a shit ton of money for. Chad Hurley was the founder of YouTube, and it was him and a few buddies, and they were based out of San Bruno, California, which is like if Palo Alto is the Park Place or boardwalk of Monopoly for Silicon Valley, San Bruno is probably like the Oriental Avenue. Okay. And that's where those guys were doing their thing. And so Google had its own video service at the time, and she uploaded, I think, the first video to Google's video service. So Google was looking at basically creating their own version of YouTube. And she said, well, let's just buy YouTube. And I think it was for $1.6 billion. It was not an insignificant sale. So the background of there are three Wojcicki girls. Now, we see down here that there's a very strong third house. We have Ceres and Juno and the moon, all third house related. And then we have three planets in Cancer, the stellium, Venus, Sun, Mars. So she's got that the Venus Mars conjunction, but throw the sun in there as well. Look, I think Susan Wojcicki is from her chart, I think she's pretty formidable, actually. And you don't, there are a lot of turtle on the fence post kinds of stories, but so I looked into her background, and man, like her father was a physicist, and he escaped, I believe, communist Hungary or Poland, maybe Poland. Anyway, I don't believe her father is Jewish, but her mother is Jewish. So they left because of communism. Now wrap your head around that, okay? Wrap your head around the fact that their parents left Europe because of the communist dictatorship and got a brand new lease on life in this great country, America, where her father taught physics at Stanford. So she and her sisters grew up around Stanford. And you would think that somebody who is the offspring of people who had roots to communist Europe, and not friendly ones, that she would look at this idea of information and the spreading of information as being a good thing, And in actuality, she became the head of censorship, really, on YouTube. She's gone now. She's left YouTube. She's worth almost $1 billion. Okay, $1 billion. But what's interesting about her chart? A couple things here. The midheaven, which is in Taurus, and algal, right? And what does Google use? They use algorithms to what? Throttle speech, right? What does algal do? It's cuts you off, right? It is the head to the body, and she's got algal conjunctor midheaven and black moon Lilith in Gemini. So that's another kind of component here, which is the dark side of Gemini, and sort of being the Kali Ma of free speech or lack thereof. So she had no problem. The other thing too is Mercury in Gemini. So of course she's going to be a communicator, and she's going to be involved in communications. And we'll just kind of slide that over here into the 11th house, since it is ingressing. So she's got an 11th house Mercury. She's engaged in, Aquarian global communication. And what's happening here? Well, there's a square with Pluto and a square with Uranus. So at some point, Mercury's going to get cut off. And this is what happened to people. She was probably the perfect person to just, get into, yep, so no, I'm not doing it. Not doing it. Nope. Can't say this. Now, there may have been a time where she might have been a champion of free speech. I don't know. I would say that with the Mercury Saturn sextile, it would be free speech within limits. Free speech within limits. That's what I would say. Right now, she went through. It wouldn't be her Chiron return, but if we go back to 2020, because she had her Chiron return in 2018. So if we go back to 2020 and 2021, here we go. Here's Chiron transiting over her true node in Aries and coming right in here, right? And this is where the power moves around Google are taking place. I'm sorry, YouTube. It's still the same thing. Are taking place, right? They're all, and she's the one. She is the point person. She is the trigger person with the true node in Aries. So you can really see in a lot of ways how astrology has played not only a role in her chart, but a role in, over a period of time, throttling and engaged in her with the throttling of information. She has Jupiter and Virgo right here on the cusp of the first house. So, she's kind of a big personality, and it's going to pay off for her, right? Like her connections. The father who teaches at Stanford, right? That's clearly Saturn in the 8th house. The father who teaches at Stanford, right? And even the father who's born in another country with Saturn here. I think it's a very interesting chart. And, she wields a lot of power. I mean, even with Uranus here, right, in the 2nd house, which is, she came in to Google probably around, I think she was employee 19. She probably started at Google, I'd say, around maybe 2000. And where are we now? 2020, 23 years she's done. She's retired, and now she's a free agent, right? To me, that's very, very Uranus in the 2nd house. And she had to have the ability to kind of maneuver and do her own thing with some autonomy. There's a lot more going on here. She'd have to pay me to do the rest of her chart. The other thing with her sisters is that she has another sister, I believe her name is Anne, who actually married Sergey Brin of Google, and her sister Anne started 23andMe. So between the two of them, they're worth well over $1 billion, these two sisters. And again, the 3rd house being siblings. I don't know what her sign or her sister is. 23andMe ran into some issues, obviously, but between her and her sister and the alphabet, Google, and the ability for them to correlate information, these are two incredibly powerful people. You can see the Venus Mars in her, can't you? Like she's like sometimes she actually looks a little bit more like a woman. Here she looks kind of like a hard ass dude, right? You can see that with her. I wouldn't trust her. I mean, she's got this inconjunct. She's got this yod. We just talked about the yod with Mercury, Saturn, and then this it all comes into Neptune here, which is very, very fuzzy, right? And I think at the end of the day, she'll just, follow whatever Saturn's lead is. She's not, I think she's in some ways a bit revolutionary, right? But she's revolutionary in a corporate sense. That's my take on her. Anyway, there you go. Susan Wojcicki, your star of the day. So I want to thank you for being here. And we're going to try to get over to 15 minutes, probably around 9:22, for those of you who are looking for that time. And I wonder if you can still slide in on Chris's sale. Maybe we can get one more day out of Chris's sale. Let's see if we can bring his sale data up. Just see what happens if you use the code. Let's see if we can just slide in today. If you want to get 20% off of this product. It says midnight. See if you can get in there. J4. He's still asleep. He might be still asleep. Might not have changed the code yet. Anyway, if you can't use the code, just throw in 15MINS. And this is at truehempscience.com, which should be on there. Truehempscience.com. Simple. True Hemp Science. One word.com. And if you still might be able to get 20% off. If not, throw in 15MINS and you'll certainly get your goodie bag of CBD products just for you, specifically chosen for your CBD needs. All right. Thanks for being here. We'll be back tomorrow, 8 a.m., I promise, on the button, on the dot. And come over to 15 Minutes of Flame. We're going to try to make sense of what's going on in Europe. So here we go. Let's give you guys where did this go? It's right here. Oh, come on, Zoom. There it is. There's the share. Right there. 15 Minutes of Flame. Come on over, hang out. And we'll bear witness to the destruction of Paris, France, Europe, and the West, and where we go from here. All right, take care. Have a great day. Bye for now.